A human barely a meter tall raises a wooden spear. In front of him stands an elephant, tusks, trunk, the real thing, and it is about to lose. This is not a fairy tale, and it is not a hoax. It happened on one island around 60,000 years ago. For years, a tiny human that hunted elephants sounded like something out of Tolkien. Scientists even nicknamed the species the Hobbit. But the bones are real. They are sitting in a cave right now, and the truth behind them is stranger than the nickname. Because the real mystery isn't how something this small killed something that big. It's why everything on this one island came out the wrong size. Hold on to that question. It has an answer, and the answer is the whole story. The island is Flores in Indonesia, just east of Bali. In 2003, archaeologists digging in a cave called Liang Bua uncovered something tiny, a skull and most of a skeleton. An adult, a female about 1 meter tall, they named her species Homo floresiensis. She was not a child, and she was not a modern human who had simply shrunk. Her brain was about 400 cubic centimeters, the size of a chimpanzee's, roughly a third of yours. And yet, in the very same dirt, there were carefully made stone tools and the butchered bones of animals far bigger than she was. So how do you kill an elephant when you're the size of a 6-year-old? Part of the answer is that this was no ordinary elephant. It was a stegodon, a genuine elephant relative. But a dwarf one shrunk down to about the size of a large pony. On the mainland, its cousins weighed several tons. On Flores, a meter-tall hunter actually had a fighting chance. And the elephants were only the start because Flores was a zoo with the dials set wrong. There were rats the size of house cats, giant rats, and one kind still scurries across the island today. There was a stork that stood close to 1.5 meters tall, looking the humans dead in the eye. And there were Komodo dragons. Those giant lizards are still there. Picture the scene: a 1 meter person, a pony-sized elephant, a cat-sized rat, and a stork as tall as a doorway. Now here is where it stops being a freak show and turns into one clean idea. All of that strangeness, the shrunken elephants, the swollen rats, the miniature people, is not a pile of coincidences. It is one rule, doing one thing to everything on the island at the same time. Biologists call it the island rule. Strand a big animal on an island, and over thousands of generations it tends to shrink. There is less food, less space, and the huge body that paid off on the mainland becomes a burden. So the smaller individuals are the ones that survive and breed. Run the same experiment on a small animal with most of its predators gone, and it tends to grow. Big things get smaller, small things get bigger. The island squeezes everything toward the middle. We see it wherever islands exist. Dwarf elephants around the Mediterranean, giant tortoises in the Galapagos. Flores just ran the experiment on nearly everything at once. And this is the part that took scientists 20 years to swallow. It ran that experiment on the humans too. Homo floresiensis did not arrive on Flores 1 meter tall. Its ancestors were a normal-sized, upright human species that reached the island and then, over hundreds of thousands of years, got resized by the very same force that miniaturized the elephants. The hunter and the hunted were shrunk by the same hand. That is the idea this whole story turns on. The island is the author, not the human. If a reframe like that is why you're here, subscribe. This channel is one long argument that the real past beats the made-up one. And we know the shrinking is old. At another Flores site, Mata Menge, researchers found human ancestors around 700,000 years old. And in 2024, a single adult arm bone, the smallest in the entire human fossil record, from someone who stood about 1 meter, even shorter than the Hobbit herself. So this was not a recent accident, it was deep and it was early. Now, not everyone bought it. When the Hobbit was announced, some researchers argued she wasn't a new species at all, just a modern human with a disease. Microcephaly, they said, or Down syndrome. One sick individual, mistaken for something extraordinary. It is a fair challenge, and the evidence took it apart. Liang Bua didn't produce one skeleton. It produced pieces of at least 9 individuals, and a single disease doesn't reshape a whole population. Her wrist bones are the clincher. They are shaped like an early human's or an ape's, nothing like ours. And that shape is locked in before birth, long before any childhood illness could touch it. And then there are those 700,000-year-old ancestors. No disease runs that long. The verdict is now the scientific consensus. She is real. What is still honestly argued is her family tree, whether she came from the tall Homo erectus and shrank, or from something older and already small. That part is unsettled, and a good channel tells you so. But the spine of the story holds. Back in Liangbua, in the same layers as the tools, lie the cut-marked bones of those dwarf elephants, mostly young ones, which is the honest detail. These tiny hunters most likely took the small and the juvenile, not full-grown giants. Still, a brain the size of a chimp snapping stone and bringing down elephants. The one thing we are taught made us special, the big brain she barely had. And she hunted anyway. And we have a fair idea of how they pulled it off, because it was never one tiny person against one animal. The clue is in the bones themselves. The elephants they butchered skew young. Choosing a calf over a full-grown adult points to patience and planning, singling out the vulnerable, then using numbers in the island's gullies to corner prey their own size or smaller. The tools they left behind are not elaborate, mostly sharp stone flakes struck and used on the spot. But against a cornered juvenile, numbers and nerve count for more than muscle. Brain volume, it turns out, is a poor measure of cunning. What these people lacked in raw gray matter, they made up for with the oldest human trick there is, doing it together. So what happened to them? For years, the answer looked unsettlingly recent. The first dates hinted the hobbits hung on until just 12,000 years ago. That turned out to be wrong. A careful redating of the cave in 2016 pushed their last traces back to around 50,000 years ago, sealed beneath a pale layer of volcanic ash. And it wasn't only the little people who vanished around then. The dwarf elephants they hunted disappear from the record at the same time. A nearby eruption may have struck the killing blow, but the timing points somewhere more uncomfortable too. 50,000 years is right about when our own kind, modern humans, were spreading through these same islands on the way to Australia. We cannot yet prove we were the reason they disappeared. The honest answer is that we don't know. But on Flores, the tiny people fade out and the tall newcomers arrive at almost exactly the same moment. And that pattern, everywhere else we find it, has rarely ended well for whoever was already there. One last myth, because it's a good one. There are short-statured villagers living right beside that cave today, and it is tempting to call them the Hobbit's descendants. They aren't. Their DNA says they are modern humans, and their small size evolved on its own thousands of years later. The island simply ran the same trick twice, on two completely different kinds of human. That is not a coincidence, that is a rule. So here's the thing to carry out of all this. The Hobbit was never a freak or a fantasy or a sick human. She was what happens when you hand evolution an island and enough time. It resizes whatever washes ashore, predator and prey alike, down to its own scale. Flores didn't just host a strange little human. Flores made her. And if a single island could do that to us in a few 100,000 years, it is worth wondering what else the planet has quietly rewritten while no one was holding the ruler. We were never the only kind of human, and if you want to meet the rest of our lost cousins, the deep dive on the hominins is right here waiting. Until then, no Atlantis, no aliens, no nonsense.